Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born!
Hey there guys, this is Richard, your host with another marvellous video. Blessed are they who witnessed 90s cartoon in its full glory, because it simply can't be denied that the 90s were easily one of the best decades for cartoon shows in the US. We all have fond memories of our childhood, blissfully enjoying the back-to-back shows, and growing up was a lot more fun back then when cartoons had both innocence and maturity in their storytelling. From adult comedy to superhero cartoons and shows for children, the era had pretty much everything. In this video, we've ranked the most notable cartoon shows that aired in the US during the 90s, and we hope you'll enjoy this nostalgic journey.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Futurama, 1999. Philip is a 25-year-old who works as a pizza delivery boy, and his mundane life changes course after he accidentally freezes himself for 1,000 years. When he wakes up in a futuristic world, things have changed drastically around him, but Philip now has a chance to make a fresh start. He begins working for a futuristic delivery service that delivers to all corners of the universe, and he even has an alien companion and a robotic accomplice. Futurama explores his exploits and struggles in his new life and how he overcomes them at every step. Coming towards the end of the 90s decade, Futurama is everything that the era accomplished in furnishing animation. The show comes with an original concept, the narrative is witty, and the humor is relatable, even today. Aside from the outstanding writing, you'll also enjoy the terrific animation quality and the well-drawn characters and backgrounds. Even the musical score fits perfectly into the theme, and rarely will you come across a cartoon show that's equal parts hilarious and moving. We could watch this a million times over, and everyone who enjoyed this series will agree. Batman, the Animated Series, 1992. This is undeniably one of the finest Batman animated shows ever made, and there's a reason why people still regard this so highly after 30 years. It captures the life of Bruce Wayne, who's a millionaire playboy during the day and a crime fighter at night. The Dark Knight is on a mission to eliminate crime in Gotham City, and he's helped by the likes of Robin, Batgirl, and Commissioner Gordon. You'll witness several of the known villains from Batman's Rogues Gallery, and there are some fresh faces as well. With the iconic voice of Kevin Conroy as Batman, it simply doesn't get better than this. This animated series has everything that you could possibly ask for, from action to drama to some much-needed comic relief. The overall tone of the show is surprisingly dark, and the fantastic animation work ensures that the visuals give you the perfect portrayal of Gotham City. The plot lines are intriguing and by no means childish, and you'll get to witness some complex characters in the show. From the several villains that Batman encounters, Mr. Freeze, Scarecrow, Joker, and the Penguin are some of the more memorable ones. The voice acting is one of the greatest assets of the show, and Mark Hamill as the Joker is one of the finest casting decisions ever made. If you want to experience the pinnacle of superhero cartoons, then this is the show to watch out for. SpongeBob SquarePants, 1999. The show might have premiered towards the end of the 90s, but it spilled over into the next decade and became a cultural phenomenon. The story finds its brilliance in simplicity, where we're told about the life of an optimistic and earnest sea sponge, SpongeBob. He lives in a small town called Bikini Bottom in the depths of the Pacific Ocean and leads his life with an overzealous approach. The show takes you through various episodes of his underwater life and his diverse group of friends and foes. It might seem like a mindless children's cartoon series, but appearances can be deceptive. The show delivers some crucial life lessons where one can learn from SpongeBob's approach of taking every chaos in his life positively, with a pinch of humor. This creative and vibrantly animated show is almost addictive, and the narrative has the ability to cheer you up in your dullest moments. Of course, the extended run of the show means that some episodes end up being a tad bit silly, but you certainly wouldn't mind with the overwhelming quality content for a majority of the show. It's one of those cartoons that entertain both kids and adults, and it might be a fun show to enjoy with your kids. SWAT Kats, The Radical Squadron, 1993. SWAT Kats is premised in a world of anthropomorphic felines, where two fighter pilots have been demoted for their enthusiasm in fighting evil. They now work as mechanics by the day, but their real motive hasn't been defeated, as they take to the skies as masked vigilantes to fight criminal masterminds and monsters that threaten Megacat City. Among the two fighter pilots, T-Bone has great flying skills, and Razor has insane technological expertise, a combination that can help them save the disaster-prone city. This is easily one of the finest Hanna-Barbera cartoons from the 90s, and it is unfortunate that the show had a rather short run. The fast-paced writing by Glenn Leopold and some jaw-dropping plot twists ensure that you'll be hooked on the series the whole time. The cool characters, action action-packed events and witty dialogues make this a solid entertainer, and even the background score is on point. The visuals are eye-pleasing, and aside from the abrupt cancellation, there's not much that SWAT Kats does wrong. It might be a good idea to revisit the show to freshen up some wonderful childhood memories. The Simpsons, 1989. This animated sitcom featuring a dysfunctional family has achieved cult status over the years. The family comprises of Homer, the childish, beer-loving father, his wife Marge, who happens to be a loving homemaker, his 10-year-old son Bart, and 8-year-old genius daughter Lisa. Maggie, the adorable infant, is also a key member of the family, and episodes of The Simpsons mainly feature their satirical misadventures. The Simpsons started the trend of finding hilarious situations in dysfunctional families, and later, shows like Family Guy carried it forward. It's sensational how a cartoon series could flourish for so long based on a simple cartoon sketch series from the Tracy Ullman Show. But what's truly shocking is the uncanny ability of the show to reveal the future. There have been several instances where the narrative jokingly showed something that took place many years down the line. The writing has always been intelligent and hilarious, and the heavy dose of adult comedy promises to be thoroughly entertaining for the fans. The show thrives in the diversity and bizarre nature of the characters, and the episodes never run dry of relevant humor from real-life situations and problems. Overall, The Simpsons is a classic that created its legacy through the 90s and changed the way how sitcoms are perceived.
Interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Show, starring
Courage, the Cowardly Dog, 1999. Here's a cartoon series from the 90s that became a special part of our childhood because of its ability to be hilarious and scary at the same time. It tells the story of Courage, a loyal but extremely timid dog who's scared of pretty much every threat that exists around the farmland where he lives. However, his fear doesn't stop him from going all out to protect his unsuspecting owners against these threats. From aliens to other supernatural stuff and dangerous monsters, Courage dares to find out a way to defeat them all. Although Courage the Cowardly Dog is widely popular among the children, there's an adult appeal in the plots that you can't ignore. The intelligent stories are darker than you'd expect, and there are times when the humor pokes at subjects that require a level of maturity to understand. While the writing is funny and Courage and his family ensure plenty of laughs, you must also be prepared for some traumatizing fear in some of the episodes. The portrayal of certain villains, such as the Puppet Man, the Sandman, and the Crazy Snowman, is indeed disturbing. You'll enjoy some solid voice acting along the way, and the animation work leaves nothing to complain about. All in all, this is an extremely well-rounded show and deserves to be ranked among the best from the 90s. Gargoyles, 1994. Back in the Dark Ages, there existed a race of heroic warrior monsters called the Gargoyles who turned into stone during the day and evolved into their true forms during the night. They developed an alliance with humans who would protect the stones during the day in exchange of protection by the Gargoyles at night. After this alliance was betrayed, the Gargoyle clan was largely destroyed, and there remained only 6 survivors. Even the survivors were turned into stone by a curse, and it only broke when the castle where they remained stationed was brought to Manhattan by a billionaire. Now, the Gargoyles must find a way of life in this new world, and they must also protect the humans from an evil gargoyle leader who wants them all dead. This isn't the typical Disney stuff that we're familiar with, and it comes as a pleasant surprise. The phenomenal storytelling has it all, from mystery to complexity to an adventure that you wouldn't forget. The suspense in the narrative keeps you interested the whole time, and there's not a single episode of poor quality that you'll come across. We're in love with the dark and stylish animation, and the lovely backgrounds add the magical touch to the visuals. The voice cast is so good that you wouldn't imagine anyone else playing these characters, and the much-needed depth of the characters have been explored to the fullest. This is easily a must-watch show that the modern generation must witness to understand how great cartoons used to be back then.
Fly, beautiful turtle doves, bring Christmas cheer to all.
Family Guy, 1999. The Simpsons had already paved the way, and Family Guy followed in the same direction. This is another sitcom with a similar dysfunctional family headed by Peter Griffin. He lives with his wife Lois, dumb teenage son Chris, unloved daughter Meg, and a genius talking baby, Stewie. The family also has a talking dog, Brian, and their bizarre exploits make up the episodes. Peter usually tries to do something good for the family, and it backfires in hilarious fashion because of his stupidity. Family Guy is probably one of the funniest and most outrageous shows that you'll come across. The makers clearly do not discriminate when it comes to crafting the most offensive jokes on a particular group or community, and those who are easily triggered should stay away by all means. The show is held together by some incredible writing, and the unexpected jokes land out of nowhere and leave you in splits. The characters are hilarious with their unique quirks, and even after such a long run, the episodes still feel fresh. Seth MacFarlane is an undisputed genius, and Family Guy is going to go down in history as one of the greatest cultural phenomena in American cartoons. Superman, the animated series, 1996. The 90s are often regarded as the golden era for superhero cartoon shows, and rightly so. If Batman, the animated series, set the standards, the series featuring Superman wasn't too far behind. It tells the story of the last son of Krypton, who's now in his adoptive home, the Earth. He lives in Metropolis, and the city is plagued by some sinister villains that Superman must deal with in order to protect his beloved homeland. One of the secrets behind the success of this animated series is that the makers followed what was previously done with Batman, the animated series. The plots aren't childish, and there's plenty of action to keep the viewers entertained, aside from the abundant humor to balance it out. We get a nice recap of Superman's origins, and the show brings in some deadly Superman villains such as Lobo, Darkseid, and Lex Luthor to make things exciting. He also teams up with other superheroes like Flash and Green Lantern, and the narrative remains engaging throughout the show. Tim Daly is the voice for Superman, and he does a damn good job with the assignment. This might be a shorter series compared to Batman, but the impact is almost just as good as the former. Todd McFarlane's Spawn, 1997. Here comes another superhero animated series featuring the remarkable anti-hero Spawn. He was an assassin trained by the government, but after being betrayed, he was killed by his employer. But his death ushers in a great battle between heaven and hell over his torn soul. Meanwhile, he's brought back as a Hellspawn, who works as the leader of Hell's army and takes down anyone who gets in his way. He protects the innocent from the corrupt while dealing with the struggles of his death and losing his wife to an old friend. What'll be the final outcome of his conflicted Hellspawn existence? The adaptation of a comic book into an animated series is easier said than done, but this particular series aces the challenge. The dark and mysterious ambiance of the comic book storyline has been retained by some excellent animation work, and the characters are better developed than what you see in the movie version. The storytelling is dark and emotional, and the episodes also get plenty of action to get things going. We love the sick sense of humor that makes the show one of the finest adult cartoons ever made. The show didn't win a Primetime Emmy Award for nothing, and created by Todd McFarlane, this highly rated series is worth watching even today.
Hey, Yo-Yo Ma! I'm sorry!
Dad!
Home Movies, 1999. This quirky and endearing animated sitcom revolves around an ambitious 8-year-old filmmaker, Brendan Small. He tries to shoot movies in his basement, helped by his two best friends, Jason and Melissa. He's created over 1,000 homemade films, and the show tries to explore his life as he grows up through adolescence and relationships. We get to see his life in school, and also his struggles to continue his filmmaking ambitions against all odds through a heartwarming and witty narrative. This is perhaps one of the most underrated animated shows from the 90s, and it never got the attention it deserved. One of the major strengths of Home Movies is the three main characters who are kids, but talk like they have adult life experience. The narrative of the show introduces some unique characters, like that of their pathetic soccer coach, John McGuirk, and even with the slow-paced storytelling, things never get dull with the witty writing. The movies that the kids make are fun to watch, especially because of their elaborate efforts in perfecting the sets with minimal tools. Home Movies is simply a work of honesty, and this subtle and intelligent show deserves your attention if you haven't watched it already. Batman Beyond, 1999. If Batman the Animated Series raised the standards, Batman Beyond maintained the legacy. This harrowing and fiery take on the Batman lore portrays an elderly Bruce Wayne. He takes on the role of a guide for a young high schooler, Terry McGinnis, who fights crime in a futuristic Gotham City. Much like Bruce Wayne back in the day, Terry is also fueled by vengeance and childhood trauma, and the show captures his adventures as he takes down new enemies alongside a handful of trusted allies. Although Warner Brothers Network was careful about not disclosing the age of Bruce Wayne, the producers revealed off the record that this version of Bruce was 80 years old. But make no mistake, the elderly Bruce Wayne and the young hero in Terry McGinnis take nothing away from the thrills that we associate with Batman. We love the what-if stories that explore the scenarios after Bruce Wayne fails to carry on the mantle of Batman. The futuristic technology, flying cars, biker gangs, and laser guns give the show a sci-fi touch that people loved back in the day. The icing on the cake is that we get Kevin Conroy again as the voice of Bruce Wayne, and some older villains from the previous series also make a comeback. Dexter's Laboratory, 1995. This is another iconic American animated series that started its journey back in the 90s. Dexter's Laboratory features the titular protagonist, who's a boy genius. He's built a secret laboratory in his room, and his parents are not aware of its existence. However, this doesn't mean that he can't conduct his experiments in peace, because his sister Dee Dee is a big-time troublemaker, and she's aware of his antics. The show takes you through their adventures and misadventures, where Dexter has to deal with his parents and sister aside from handling his arch-rival Mandark, who also has a laboratory laboratory of his own. Dexter's Laboratory would easily rank among the top 10 shows of Cartoon Network before they stopped airing it for no good reason. The concept was unique, and the exploits of the young scientist made for some unforgettable episodes. We loved everything from Dexter's adorable accent to the exceptional voice performance by Christine Kavanagh. The sophisticated animation was pleasing for the eyes, and the show handled some amazing spoofs of popular shows like Star Wars, Charlie's Angels, and G.I. Joe. The chemistry between Mandark and Dee Dee was fun to watch, and the brother-sister duels between Dexter and Dee Dee were far too relatable for those with siblings. This is a cartoon for the ages, and a show that can be re-watched 1,000 times. Daria, 1997. Adolescence can be a tricky period to handle for young girls, and Daria brings you the most realistic version of the struggles that are associated with this age. Daria is a smart teenager who's cynical and doesn't shy away from defying the crowd. Her sarcasm and straightforward views make her unpopular, but she doesn't compromise on her principles in order to fit in. The show is all about Daria making her way through life in school at Lawndale High, where she must deal with idiotic teenagers and condescending adults. Daria is a special show for those who can relate to the character and refuse to fit into the crowd by doing things they don't even like. Her personality has been shaped to perfection, and her intelligent and rigid way of life is admirable. This insightful animated series on MTV was smartly written to resonate with the target audience, and the plot developments toward the end of the series are surprisingly mature. You'll fall in love with the jokes, the self-reflection, cliched and diverse characters, and overall the feel-good nature of the show. If you think modern-day high school comedies are fun, well, you should check this one out to find out how much better they could be.
You should see a psychiatrist.
I am a piece of...
Animaniacs, 1993. You wouldn't come across such quality content that blends humor, slapstick comedy, and pop culture references so effectively. The show talks about the trio of cartoon characters, Yakko, Wakko, and Dot, who have escaped from the Warner Brothers water tower. Now, it's their maniacal energy against the world as the tradition of Looney Tunes continues through this series, with the protagonists engaging in hilarious, over-the-top antics. There are some notable appearances of familiar faces from the cartoon world, such as Pinky and the Brain, Chicken Boo, etc., etc. There's a reason why people who grew up through the 80s and 90s consider the modern-day cartoons to be lame, and the reason is quality cartoon shows like Animaniacs. The series is a laugh riot when you watch it as a kid, and it only gets better when you re-watch it as an adult. The pop culture humor is addictive, and you'll be blown away by the flamboyance of the animation. It's one of the rare cartoon shows where even the side characters are memorable, and it's one of the great mysteries how the show was abruptly cancelled. When we think of a complete cartoon show that's fun and thought-provoking at the same time while offering blissful entertainment, Animaniacs is the name that comes to mind. X-Men, the animated series, 1992. The 90s version of X-Men animated series ranks right up there with the likes of Batman and Superman animated shows from the decade. The show brings you the familiar story of the team of mutant superheroes under the guidance of Professor Charles Xavier. These mutants with unique superpowers have to fight corrupt government organizations, mutant discrimination, and also the vengeful evil mutants who seek to destroy humanity. With powerful opponents such as Magneto, Apocalypse, and the Sentinels, it's a good thing that Professor Xavier has some solid support from mutant heroes like Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Gambit, etc., etc. This animated series is more faithful to the comic books than any of the X-Men movies you'll come across. Every comic book lover will appreciate the accurate character designs and the perfect animation that's detailed and atmospheric. The narrative has emotional moments punctuating the loads of action, and there's enough jokes to tickle your funny bone. We must spare a word for the expressive voice acting, and altogether, it's a project that does justice to some of the finest story arcs from the comic books that have been in publication for over 30 years. There are some minor continuity problems, and this series doesn't end as the makers had initially intended, but these are far too negligible flaws in such an unforgettable project.
Bad bug, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when the...
Cartoon Planet, 1995. Cartoon Planet has a theme that'll be familiar to those who watch Space Ghost Coast to Coast. We believe that the humor here gets even better than its predecessor, and the show features a brain-damaged space pirate named Brak alongside the iconic Space Ghost. Zorak is the other participant in this talk show, where they talk about random stuff and go on extensive rants. With quirky music and a bunch of songs along with the extensive speeches, it's a show that you'll remember for a very long time. There are some remarkable initiatives that Cartoon Network cancelled untimely, and Cartoon Planet is one that baffled the fans. This underrated piece of brilliant insanity deserved a much longer run, and there was no rationality behind the cancellation. The narrative is surprisingly random, and the witty jokes are as good as the ones from popular shows like The Simpsons. The primary characters, Space Ghost, Brak, and Zorak, dish out far too many jokes within half an hour to leave you beaming from ear to ear. We strongly recommend checking out this lost piece of art because Cartoon Planet deserves to be a cult classic. They don't make shows like this anymore. Rocko's Modern Life, 1992. Welcome to the misadventures of Rocko, a wallaby who's immigrated to the US from Australia. He tries in O-Town and tries his best to adjust to the new life. His transition to the American way of life is quite eventful, but luckily he's not alone in this. His best friend Heifer and canine companion Spunky are always by his side. However, Rocko still has a lot on his plate with his neurotic neighbor Ed Bighead, who hates him. The episodes take you through his journey as he tries to balance out the good and bad of his new life. This has to be one of the top 5 cartoon shows that aired on Nickelodeon. The hilarious narrative comes with a subtle sense of humor, and the jokes will be appreciated by a mature crowd. Some of the script work was done by the legendary Stephen Hillenburg, who later went on to create SpongeBob SquarePants. Rocko's Modern Life isn't exactly a kids show because some of the scenes are shockingly violent, aside from the rampant adult jokes. If you're not easily offended by some rude and crude humor, this cartoon series is gonna change your life.
Does not seem impressed by the heavy metal look, forsooth.
The Mask animated series, 1995. Stanley Ipkiss lives in Edge City and wants to lead a normal life like everyone else. However, he has in his possession the magical mask of Loki, and this mystical artifact has a mind of its own. Whenever evil lurks around or Stanley finds himself in danger, he simply can't help donning the mask, which changes him into a maniacal superhero. There are several minds in the city that want to steal the mask for themselves, and it's Stanley in his uncontrollable avatar to protect the innocent civilians and the power of the mask. With a long line of disciplined and righteous superheroes, watching the mask in action is a welcome change. The movie, starring Jim Carrey, absolutely owned the character, and the fans simply adored the unpredictable heroics of the mask. The cartoon series is not too far behind, and it retains the goodness of the movie and uses many comic book references as well. The animation looks marvelous with a lot of vibrancy and color, and the free-flowing jokes make the episodes entertaining. The show wouldn't have been as great without the memorable voice acting by Rob Paulson, and the lineup of some iconic villains such as Mayor Tilton and Stinger adds to the fun factor. Those looking for some light-hearted fun cartoons will find this suitable to their taste. Spider-Man, the animated series, 1994. With every superhero cartoon being a raging hit in the 90s, how can the friendly neighborhood superhero be left behind? Spider-Man, the animated series, brings the young crime-fighting vigilante Peter Parker into the limelight. After he's bitten by a radioactive spider, he gains spider-like superpowers, and now he uses them to fight evil in the city. Peter also has to deal with his personal relations as he tries to keep his superhero identity a secret, and there are some mighty supervillains like Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, Venom, etc., who make life difficult for the young man. This series is often regarded as one of Marvel Animation's crowning achievements, and we don't think it's an exaggeration. The good writing complements the storylines that remain faithful to the comic books. Spider-Man is often helped by other superheroes like Iron Man and Doctor Strange, and these episodes are particularly fun to watch. The theme tune is still music to our ears, and the animation work is nearly flawless. Christopher Daniel Barnes is the perfect choice as the voice for Spider-Man, and the show doesn't put a foot wrong in its execution. It's a shame that legal issues led to an untimely cancellation, but this still remains one of the best versions of Spider-Man ever made.
Satanic rituals on the next Geraldo.
What's that address again?
Beavis and Butthead, 1993. The titular protagonists are two outlandish and brash teenagers with a taste for metal music. They're your typical annoying teenagers with all the wrong qualities, and they often end up doing idiotic stuff triggered by their boredom. The episodes mostly feature them lazing around and commenting on contemporary American culture. Beavis and Butthead have an expert opinion on everything from reality TV shows to music, and the dumber their opinions, the funnier it gets. It takes some exceptional writing skills to execute something as simple as the premise of this animated series. Inspired by an annoying 12-year-old, the show creator Mike Judge created the characters, and they can be far too relatable at times if you know a handful of teenagers around you. The narrative can be gross and sick, but it never stops being hilarious. These teenagers aren't exactly role models, with the constant urge to drink alcohol and lose their virginity, and it's not surprising that the show was shunned by several parents. If you still managed to sneakily watch the series back in the day, you've lived a childhood worth being nostalgic about. South Park, 1997. Comedy shouldn't have barriers and restrictions, and South Park takes this philosophy very seriously. It's a show that introduces four fourth graders, Eric, Stan, Kyle and Kenny. They're usually up to no good, and Eric is a foul-mouthed, obese kid who says the most outrageous and hilarious things. Their adventures in their small town of Colorado and their school life is usually the subject of the show, and the events in South Park range from both real-life problems to supernatural phenomena. The small mountain town of South Park is weird and strangely relatable at the same time. The show became an instant hit because people could relate to the issues faced by the townsmen and even the four protagonists. The narrative didn't hesitate to take up sensitive issues, and many jokes received a lot of flack from the sensitive audience. Not that it ever stopped the creators. We're addicted to the satirical humor of the show, and one simply can't help but admire the skillful voice acting from the creators, Matt Stone and Trey Parker. Those who enjoy social satires with unlimited comedy should make South Park their steady dinnertime companion.
Well, I guess I've always been a superhero. I don't know much else.
The Tick, 1994. As long as we're on the subject of satires, this might be a good time to explore some good old superhero satire. The Tick introduces the titular blue-clad superhero in a bizarre costume who deemed himself to be the protector of the city. After he runs into an accountant in a moth costume, the two of them decide to team up to fight crime. But can this unlikely duo really save the city when a notorious villain plans to flood the entire region? Witness the adventures of a dim and invulnerable superhero as he tries to replicate what all superheroes do. The Tick is a cartoon adaptation of a popular comic book that's often regarded as a cult classic, and the makers are in the right lane while attempting this daring project. The 7-foot-tall and 400-pound superhero isn't exactly your ideal superhero figure, but it's the perfect spoof of the entire genre. The narrative offers enough action, and there are some memorable characters and villains who keep things engaging the whole time. You'll never get tired of the satirical humor and dialogues, and the perfect voice casting is the icing on the cake. The first season is particularly impressive, and watching The Tick is almost like observing poetry in motion. Pokemon, 1997. This is perhaps one of the most influential cartoon shows ever made, and people went crazy about the fictional world of powerful creatures, the Pokemons. The cartoon series starts off with the journey of Ash Ketchum, who seeks to become the greatest Pokemon trainer in the world. He sets out with his friends and his favorite Pokemon companion, Pikachu. In the course of their journey, they come across various new Pokemons for Ash to capture, and he must also engage in some intense Pokemon battles to fight his way to the #1 position. You may have liked or disliked the show, but the fact that you know about it speaks volumes about its popularity. The original Kanto Pokemon might have introduced the concept, but the American audience largely got familiarized with this new world because of this show. At the height of its popularity, Pokemon games, toys, cards, and anything featuring these unique fictional creatures were selling like hotcakes. The show runs high on emotions and drama, but there are some significant battles that are full of suspense, great characters, iconic Pokemons, and overall some brilliant marketing ensured that Pokemon as a franchise will go down as a cultural phenomenon of our times. Hysteria, 1998. Here comes the smartest and easiest way to learn history. Hysteria takes you through the boring history lessons, mixing them up with everyday characters and real-life situations to make it appealing. There are certain episodes that are filled with spoof content of contemporary TV shows, and many others are actually informative with real quotes and original signatures of historical figures displayed on the screen. Educational animated shows often fail to score high on the entertainment quotient, but Hysteria never falls short in this regard. The creators have ensured that the narrative is both intelligent and silly to offer a few laughs along with the lessons. Imagine an episode where Napoleon points to certain countries on a map and says, "Got it, got it." So, you get the drift of the show. Some of the jokes are subtle enough for only the smart ones to decipher, and we haven't encountered a better way to learn history without the books and classrooms. It's a pity that such a fun and educational show only ran for a solitary season before it was taken off the air. We need more of such well-researched content for kids today.
Hello, I am Space Ghost. Welcome to
Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, 1994. We've already introduced you to Space Ghost in one of our earlier entries, and this animated series is where it all started. The titular Space Ghost used to be a legendary superhero, but now in his 40s, his crime-fighting days are behind him. He now hosts a talk show and goes by his real name, Tad Ghostal. This late-night talk show is filmed in outer space, and his co-host is none other than one of his former villains named Zorak. They usually interview celebrities from Earth, and the fun banter and discussion make the episodes lively and entertaining. Sometimes the most unserious and random shows end up being the most impactful, and Space Ghost Coast to Coast is a classic example. The comedy doesn't try too hard, and it's still as effective as you'd want. The animation might appear goofy and a rip-off of the 60s Space Ghost show, but the visuals wouldn't be too much of your concern with the golden content on offer. Many people couldn't appreciate the brilliance of the show when they were kids, and only enjoyed the content as adults. So, if you've missed out on this underrated gem, now would be a good time to check it out.
-5 and counting. 4, 3, 2,
The Magic School Bus, 1994. Lessons in school can become mundane after a point unless you're a part of Walkerville Elementary School. Here, one of the classes teaches students in a unique way, where the teacher, Miss Frizzle, takes them on a field trip on a magical school bus. This vehicle is capable of going anywhere, and the students get to explore everything from the hostile Arctic terrain to space. They end up with first-hand experience of the basic principles of science, and they learn in a way that they can never forget. The imaginative plot is innovative and something that a student can only dream of. The episodes are educational without being too imposing or boring, and there are some adorable moments that'll take you back to your school days. The varied settings make the visuals appealing, and even the dynamic music goes well with the energetic theme of the show. The characters are fun, especially the students who have their unique defining traits. Parents didn't seem to mind their kids hooked onto this show because they were learning about the human body, geography, science and history without any complaint. May the education system get inspired by the techniques adopted by this show. The Critic, 1994. What happens when you make a snobbish film critic review the most pathetic films repeatedly? Well, he expresses his disgust without mincing words, and so does the protagonist of this animated series, Jay Sherman. This New York critic is known for his harsh words, and through his views, the show pulls off several movie parodies. The episodes also explore his love life and family, and how he struggles to adjust with his tyrannical media mogul boss at work. Will the overweight and pessimistic film critic be able to strike a balance between his work and his newly developing romance? The show's created by the same team that worked on The Simpsons, and you'll find traces of the iconic humor throughout the narrative. It takes a special talent to parody some of cinema's finest, and the creators are up to the task. The presence of veteran comic actor John Lovitz as the voice for Jay Sherman is the cherry on the cake, and like many other promising shows, The Critic was cancelled at the height of its potential. This show has still developed a cult following over the years, and you too will find yourself admiring Jay Sherman for his fight against mediocre and repetitive cinema. Real Monsters, 1994. Monsters are supposed to be scary and intimidating, and such is the norm among the existing monsters in this fictional world. Ablina, Ickis, and Crumb are three young monsters, and they're learning the art of scaring others at the prestigious Monster Academy. But things are easier said than done, and the three adorable monsters soon find out that they aren't exactly experts of intimidation. Many of their attempts fail miserably, and the trio must find a way to survive the intense competition in the academy. The story might seem to be about adolescent life and its struggles, but the theme is really about the unlikely friendship that develops between the three protagonists. It aired shortly after the popular show Rugrats ended, and the cute little monsters in their struggles in school will immediately have your heart. The narrative features the right amount of horror and comedy, and the satirical adult humor at times will appeal to a mature audience as well. The well-drawn animation makes it a rather good-looking cartoon, and we can't recall a single chink in the armor of this series. It's easily one of the finest hours of Nickelodeon cartoons, and these are some of the rare monsters that you'll miss after you're done watching.
Dastardly delinquents deposited on your doorstep courtesy of Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck, 1991. The city of St. Canard has some strange criminals who disturb the peaceful life of their citizens. Luckily for them, their protector, Darkwing Duck, is a bumbling superhero who's up to the task. He might be arrogant and egotistical, but he gets the job done along with his silly sidekick, Launchpad McQuack, and adopted daughter, Gosalyn. The show dives into his heroics and takes you through his intense fights against the evil forces. It might be hard to believe that Disney let this one pass in spite of all the hard-hitting stuff across the narrative. The stories can get twisted and demented at times, and the surprisingly dark theme will remind you of works of Tim Burton and Paul Verhoeven. While almost every scene in the show is a rip-off of something, it still retains its originality through the imaginative storytelling, and Darkwing Duck somehow manages to make over-the-top stuff enjoyable. Watch out for the badass villains such as Negaduck, Bushroot, and Megavolt, and you can be assured of some jaw-dropping action along the way. For those who dare to venture into the dangerous territory of cartoons, Darkwing Duck will prove to be an enriching experience. Tiny Toon Adventures, 1990. Every cartoon enthusiast fondly remembers the popular Warner Brothers Looney Tunes characters. Tiny Toon Adventures focuses on the new generation of these unforgettable figures who come to study at Acme Acres Looniversity. Buster and Babs Bunny are the primary protagonists, and they indulge in a variety of adventures alongside their classmates. The New Age Looney Tunes characters include the likes of Dizzy Devil, Plucky Duck, Calamity Coyote, Sweetie Bird, among others. There are also some villainous characters in the mix of things to make things challenging for them. This cartoon cartoon series is a warm reminder of the legacy of American cartoons, and the episodes bring you some wonderful characters with great personalities. We're fans of the vibrant animation work, which is crisp and clean, and the hilarious antics of the protagonist will ensure her laughing fit. While humor is the strongest component of the show, the makers also skillfully avoid the risk of venturing into cliched and predictable storytelling. The famous voice acting cast has people like Rob Paulson, Don Messick, and Maurice LaMarche in the ranks, and they deliver the goodness as expected. It's a groundbreaking classic that doesn't get appreciated enough, even though it stands for everything right about the 90s cartoon shows.
Kindergartners too?
Recess, 1997. This animated series is a touching tale of growing up through the lenses of 6 brave 4th graders in an elementary school. They strive to protect the other kids on the playground from bullies and a sleazy headmaster. Even the playground guard is a tough nut to crack, but the 6 protagonists, 4 guys and 2 girls, never buckle under pressure. These kids maintain their principles against all odds, and in the course of time, they also learn about friendship and other aspects of adulating. There couldn't be a more nostalgic ride into the carefree days of your childhood than watching Recess with an open mind. This Disney show came up with some very creative episodes, and there's an abundance of unique characters, each of whom has their unique personalities. The smooth animation is a throwback to the golden era of Disney, and the voice actors are quite convincing in their respective roles. However, when all's said and done, the best thing about the show will still be the relatable factor, which will strike everyone who's been through the days of innocence during their school life.
Mister, I don't think you understand who you're talking to. I'm Johnny
Johnny Bravo, 1995. Here is introducing the dumb, blonde egomaniac, the titular character who believes that every woman is out there to seek him out. Johnny Bravo is high on confidence, and he's easily smitten by the pretty ladies out there. His chiseled body, pompous hairstyle, and Elvis-like accent might make him slightly appealing, but his silly maneuvers make him fail miserably at womanizing. His misadventures frequently get him into trouble, but he never steps out from the delusion of his narcissism. Not every cartoon series needs to have an emotional factor or underlying depth in the story in order to find greatness. Johnny Bravo proves that even with no serious subjects and an utter lack of logic, episodes can be enjoyable and addictive. The spoof episodes are hilarious, and the voice actors have performed out of their skin to breathe life into some of the outrageous characters, especially for Johnny. While it's a wonderful show with a massive fan following, we have to admit that the series' quality does drop off during the later episodes. The writing wasn't as funny as before, and even the animation style changed slightly. It's still one of the iconic shows of the 90s that stands taller than most of the modern-day garbage that's served in the name of cartoons. Rugrats, 1991. What does the world look like from a baby's point of view? We'll find the answers in this intriguing cartoon series where 4 babies, Tommy, Chucky, Bill, and Lil, take center stage. We hear them communicate between each other, and they observe the world where everything seems bigger and mysterious for them. There are some interesting characters such as Tommy's cousin Angelica and their friend Susie, and most of the time the adults are oblivious to the strange problems encountered by the babies. You know an animated series has entered the Hall of Fame after it's enjoyed a successful run of 13 years. Rugrats is easily one of the most popular shows on Nickelodeon, and the show started off with the simplest of premises and an innovative execution. With time, the jokes got better and the stories flowed more fluidly. Even though a majority of things are shown from the baby's perspective, adults will find relatable content in the episodes just as much as the kids. Although the show came back after being called off abruptly in between, the original 65 episodes are undeniably the best moments of Rugrats. Who doesn't like an occasional healthy dose of cute and adorable content? Reboot, 1994. There exists an entire world inside the computers, and Mainframe is a city in this fictional world. It's watched over by Bob, who teams up with Dot Matrix and her brother Enzo in order to protect the city from various virus attacks. The evil viruses include Megabyte and Hexadecimal, and a rivalry that started casually soon turns into a far more serious conflict, where the life of Bob and his friends, along with the existence of Mainframe, is threatened. Can they stand tall against the evil forces? This Canadian computer-animated venture aired in the US amidst a lot of curiosity, and the fans were not disappointed. It's the world's first 100% computer-animated show, and the thrilling plot often makes you forget that everything is taking place in a computer world. The story unfolds slowly and steadily, and it's unfortunate that such a terrific show didn't get the appreciation that it deserved. Smart references and inside jokes make the show a compelling watch for those who love intelligent humor. It's leagues ahead of other similar animated projects, and Reboot has been left as a landmark for future computer-animated TV shows to compete with.
Pinky, are you all right?
Yes.
The pancakes are still...
Pinky and the Brain, 1995. This cartoon series has a couple of rather unusual protagonists. Pinky and Brain are two laboratory mice kept at Acme Labs. While genetic alteration has turned Brain into a genius, Brain has some insane and silly traits that make him a hilarious sidekick. Every night they hatch some kind of plan for world domination, and they intend to take over humanity in these ambitious missions. Of course, they aren't successful, but that never stops them from coming back harder the next day. Two lab mice are not exactly the image that comes to mind when we think of dreaded villains, but Pinky and his accomplice spare no efforts in attempting the impossible. The cartoon series is absolute hysteria, and the ridiculous and outrageous plots are sure to leave a smile on your face. The humor is the kind that will appeal to both children and adults. The deadly combination of Rob Paulsen and Maurice LaMarche ensures that the voice acting is handled effortlessly, and their chemistry as Pinky and Brain respectively is remarkable. The animation is flawlessly done, and the audacious use of colors and pretty visuals make it worth a solid viewing. The show is a worthy successor to Animaniacs, and you can't help but fall in love with the cute and zany narrative. Although the cartoon series technically arrived in the latter half of 1989 and continued into the 90s, it's a very important show because it set the tone for the decade. It was ranked 1 among syndicated cartoons after its release, and the fresh storyline was a welcome break from the cliches of the animated world. Chip and Dale are two fun-loving chipmunks who are unsuspecting crime fighters as part of their job profile. There are some interesting characters, such as Gadget, Zipper, and Monterey Jack, and the show covers their remarkable adventures. Disney never failed short of surprising the viewers every now and then with such exceptional animated shows. The characters of the show are basically a gang of animals and their life on a tree. Make no mistake, it's a lot better and subtly deeper than what the description suggests. We admire the witty writing and the consistent characterizations, and everything from the catchy background music to the lively animation quality will attract you to the show. The recurring bad guys are fun to watch in action, and it's adorable how the storytelling deals with themes like friendship and teamwork. The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, 1996. Johnny Quest is a young teenager who happens to be a computer wizard. Along with his friends and extended family, he embarks on several adventures where they investigate apparently supernatural events and take on international criminals. Johnny uses the resources of Quest Foundation to get the job done, and one of the most powerful tools is the computer-generated virtual reality domain Quest World. It's also sought after by many of their enemies, and Johnny and his allies must be one step ahead of their rivals. This animated series is often regarded as the pride and joy of TBS network during the 90s, and rightly so. Teenagers and young adults loved their sense of adventure in the plot, and the more or less continuous narrative always managed to hold the interest of the audience. While you enjoy the smart writing, you'll also notice the wonderful animation quality that brings a lively vibrancy to the show. The story brought in some believable and likable characters, which is always an asset for a cartoon series. The voice cast featured some recognizable names from the industry, including Rob Paulsen, Robert Patrick, and Frank Welker. In short, this is a Hanna-Barbera classic that ended too soon, and every kid deserves to enjoy the entertaining innocence of this show.
In trouble again, Abu?
Aladdin, 1994. This animated series is based on the popular Disney movie, and the focus is once again on the street rat Aladdin, who's now engaged to Princess Jasmine. Before becoming the Prince of Agrabah, he's spending his days exploring the world and helping those in need. Princess Jasmine also learns a thing or two about ruling, and the series also features familiar faces from this Arabian Night classic: the genie, Abu the monkey, the sky parrot, Iago, and the Sultan. As always, Aladdin has to protect Agrabah from the evil forces, but with the genie by his side, nothing is impossible. Many of the Disney shows came with a 65-episode limit, but the response to Aladdin was so promising that they extended it to 86 episodes. This is a must-watch for those with a fascination for fantasy, and all the characters are nicely sketched out in the show. The storylines are thrilling and suspenseful, and some classic villains are introduced, such as Mosenrath, Ayama, Mirage, and Agul. The animation is good, the action is solid, and even the music kicks ass. It's one of those rare shows that can never get too childish or too annoying for those who watched it religiously in their childhood. Tailspin, 1990. Tailspin is an innovative spin-off of The Jungle Book and introduces many of the familiar characters throughout the narrative. Baloo the bear is an out-of-work pilot who finally finds employment under Rebecca Cunningham's delivery agency. It's soon an adventurous world for Baloo out there, and he has to deal with air pirates and treasure hunts. Besides being the lovable bear that he is, he has the support of his young assistant, Kit Cloudkicker, and the other notable characters in the show include Wildcat the mechanic and King Louie, who runs a restaurant. With a show focused on Baloo, one of the most popular Jungle Book characters, curiosity about the show was high. It lived up to the expectations, and with the witty writing and spot-on animation, TaleSpin is a joy to watch. We love the use of some excellent supporting characters introduced in the show, and the talented group of voice actors bring these popular characters to life. In spite of winning the Primetime Emmy Award for the Outstanding Animated Program category, TaleSpin was untimely cancelled after a solitary season. Freakazoid, 1995. Dexter Douglas was your average young geek till he was gifted with the Pinnacle chip on Christmas. Later, when he went on the internet, he was sucked in due to a flaw in the chip and his head was filled with all the information online. He became somewhat silly, but he could now turn into an unpredictable, freakish superhero with long red underwear and blue skin. He fought crime in Washington, D.C. and took on all the goofy villains with his newly acquired powers. There's a thing about weird superheroes and their quirks, which makes shows like The Mask or Freakazoid entertaining. The comedy never stops when he's on screen, and his dialogues are more amazing than his superpowers. The wackiness of the show is at par with Animaniacs, and the intelligent jokes, spoofs, and fun storytelling never gets boring. Surprisingly, the audience for the show ended up being older than the target audience, and eventually, this led to the show getting cancelled because the ratings weren't up to the mark. If you missed out on this hidden gem back in the day, now might be a good time to check it out. Hey Arnold, 1996. Arnold is a 9-year-old fourth grader who lives in a city that closely resembles Brooklyn, New York. This kid with a football-shaped head lives with his grandparents in a multiracial boarding house, and he's a dreamy, jazz-loving young boy. The show explores his life and adventures in school, where he's accompanied by his best friend Gerald and often tormented by Helga. With all kinds of people around him, both at home and in school, Arnold's life is quite eventful, and this makes the show interesting. At a first glance, you might be mistaken into thinking that the show is for kids. However, the content has a lot of depth that can only be appreciated by mature minds. All the characters are diverse and well written, and you'll love the chemistry between Arnold and his tormentor Helga, who's secretly in love with him. The exciting voice acting makes these entertaining characters stand out, and we admire the fact that most of these characters defy the usual stereotypes that we see in cartoon shows. People who enjoy sophisticated humor and a good old school style animated series should definitely check out Hey Arnold. The New Adventures of He-Man, 1990. This serves as a sequel series to He-Man, and the story is premised 10,000 years into the future. The mighty titular hero of Eternia is summoned to the planet Primus, which is a new world threatened by the evils of Skeletor and the evil mutants led by Flug. This new evil alliance seeks to dominate the entire universe, and He-Man is all that stands in the way of their ambitions. However, He-Man is not alone in this fight, and he's helped by the Galactic Guardians, which is a loyal group of soldiers led by gallant generals. Thus begins another intense war between the good and the evil. By the time this show was released, people were already familiar with the iconic He-Man and his tales of bravery. The twist in the familiar plot is a welcome change, but the show comes with its share of flaws. The animation style can be annoying at times, and the voice acting for Prince Adam or He-Man is definitely not up to the mark. Keeping these issues aside, He-Man from the future is fun to watch, because now there are more amazing things and fighting tools in Eternia and Primus. The lighter tone of the show makes it enjoyable for kids as well, and we love the action, especially the scenes of aerial assaults. Overall, the show definitely deserved a longer run than a single season, and it's definitely a worthy sequel, considering the greatness of the 80s animated series. The Ren and Stimpy Show, 1991. Sometimes the simplest of animated shows have the greatest of charms, and this one is a great example. The series is all about the adventures of the two main protagonists, Ren, who's a psychotic chihuahua, and Stimpson, aka Stimpy, a dim-witted cat. They have their share of challenges to deal with, and they range from stinky litter boxes to jars of spit and eating dirt outside. All these disgusting activities lead them from one adventure to another, and their quirky nature makes you laugh at everything they do. This is one of the most popular Nickelodeon shows from the 90s, and you'd be surprised how compact the stories are. The humor is, of course, the defining characteristic of the show, and a lot of this humor isn't exactly for kids to understand. The use of classical music as the background score is a pleasant surprise, and we strongly believe that Johnny K pushed animation to the next phase with his masterful work in this series. After the first 2 seasons, however, Johnny's construct was terminated because of disagreements with the management, and the quality did drop off following his departure. Peppa Pepper Ann, 1997. We've had quite a few animated shows during the 90s which were focused around kids and their challenges in life or their fun adventures. Pepper Ann is yet another such series which talks about the life of a 12-year-old girl who doesn't have too many friends because of her nerdy behavior. She tries too hard to fit in at times, but her poor timing ends up making things worse for her. Adding to her problems, the perfectionist principal in middle school is always after her, waiting for her to make mistakes, and through all her challenges, she only has 2 friends who help her through life. The best thing about Pepper Ann is that even though the stories are fun and entertaining, there are some important messages delivered to the audience without being preachy. The narrative deals with the struggles of thousands of young teenagers who aren't the most popular kids in school, and the witty writing also makes sure that these struggles are highlighted enough. You'll also enjoy the colourful animation work, and the showrunners also maturely handle the one-parent family of Pepper Ann as her parents are divorced. This isn't your typical animated series, and we rank this quite high for a Disney cartoon. Doug, 1991. Much like the protagonist of Pepper Ann, Doug is a young 12-year-old, only from the opposite gender. The show maneuvers through the life of this 6th grader and the challenges that come with it. After moving to Bluffington from Bloatsburg with his parents and his sister Judy, Doug quickly befriends Skeeter and a few others. He also ends up with some rivals, and Doug maintains a journal where he writes all about his make-believe adventures as a superhero named Quail Man. Experience his obstacles in life as Doug finally moves into the 7th grade. One of the reasons that the show managed to stand out was because it was extremely relatable and based on real-life people and situations. The diverse range of characters makes things interesting, and the animation standard is also up to the mark. The humor is on point, and some of Doug's antics never fail to deliver a smile. The stories across the episodes are simple yet fun, and the voice acting has been superbly handled by a perfect cast. If you were a dreamy kid back in the day, and imaginations often got too far ahead of you, then you'll relate to Doug like no one else.
Ready?
Sonic the Hedgehog, 1993. Based on the popular video game series, Sonic the Hedgehog animated series added to the long line of movies and cartoons from the franchise. This story is based in a post-apocalyptic future, and in this dystopian world, the tyrannical Dr. Robotnik reigns supreme. In this harsh new world, Sonic is one of the freedom fighters who stands up against the oppressive regime. He's helped by his friend Tails and a few others who fight the powerful minions of Dr. Robotnik and even the dreaded villain himself. This animated series isn't the typical cartoony stuff that you see, and it wasn't afraid of exposing the kids to the dark and serious side of cartoons. Voted as the 2nd most violent kids show of all time, Sonic the Hedgehog came with a dark atmosphere and a suitable story arc. Dr. Robotnik is no goofy villain here, and dare we say, this was almost like the Star Wars in the cartoon world in the 90s. The artwork is terrific, and the entire voice cast has a wonderful chemistry with each other. It'll get everything from action, adventure, emotions, and some humor to balance it out, and this complete entertainment package simply can't be ignored.
Going to do that, Eddie. Hey! I know just what to do!
Ed, Edd and Eddy, 1999. The day-to-day life of 3 friends, Ed, Edd and Eddy, is the focus of this show, and their numerous misadventures promise to be a laugh riot. Ed may not be the smartest, but he is the strongest among the trio, while Ed is the one with the brains. Eddy is the unannounced leader of the group and also the meanest of them. Their antics usually involve various scams to make money, and in the course of their heists, they also have to deal with other kids who are their rivals. The end of the 90s marked a few cartoon shows that set the standards high for the next decade. This is one of them, with an abundance of satirical comedy and good old storytelling to involve the viewers. The characters are all well written, and they have depth and personality. They end up in some far-fetched and outrageous situations, and through the 3 protagonists, you'll get a glimpse of every typical adolescent personality. We're a big fan of the pencil and watercolor style animation, and the show deserves to be appreciated simply for the originality of the content. Biker Mice from Mars, 1993. Throttle, Vinny, and Modo are 3 alien motorcycle-riding mice. They'd been forced to abandon their home planet of Mars because of the evil Plutarchians. Now, they're on Earth, and they fight the Catatonians, the evil cat-like creatures, and other forms of evil that threaten the planet. This mini-rebellion is handled in style by the bike-riding badass mice who struggle to protect the Regenerator, a device that can deliver anything when requested. The Catatonians want to use the device and turn planets into giant sandboxes, while the mice make use of it to get water water for survival. Thus, the age-old struggle between good and evil begins. The plot might sound ridiculous, but you'll soon be sucked into this bizarre world and its politics. The action is adrenaline pumping and good enough to make you forget that you're actually watching mice fighting cats. The Plutarchians are also quite threatening as these fish-like humanoid creatures clash with the biker mice. Our heroes look super cool in their sleek motorbikes, and the animation has the typical 90s goodness that makes everything look great. You can tell that the voice actors are having fun while working on these roles, and it reflects in the chemistry between the characters. Overall, the adventures of the biker mice are worth watching even today, if only for the goofiness of things. Captain Planet and the Planeteers, 1990. While we finally seem to have a good understanding of the evils of pollution in modern times, this animated series got the job done to raise awareness back in the early 90s. It all begins with the spirit of the planet Gaia, assembling a powerful team of Planeteers to combine their powers and create an elemental warrior and superhero, Captain Planet. They fight against pollution and the villains who cause it, and their goal is to bring pollution down to zero. Their fight may have failed in the real world, but the show keeps things evergreen and entertaining with a dash of wise advice. A superhero that fights pollution is a genius concept, and the best thing about the show is that it never becomes preachy or mundane. Some of the finest animators are at work here, and their talent is reflected in the terrific visuals. This cartoon impacted an entire generation, and the enthusiasm in the narrative will get to the viewers. Not many people know that Tom Cruise was initially on board to be the voice for Captain Planet, and he even recorded 6 episodes before backing out. David Coburn was recast for the role, and we have to agree that he did a fine job as well. We need more shows like this in today's time, and there could be no better way to teach the kids about pollution.
You bet.
Arthur, 1996. Arthur is based on the popular books by Mark Brown, and it takes you through the adventures of the titular character, who's an 8-year-old aardvark. Through the stories of their day-to-day life, the episodes teach kids how to deal with various forms of childhood trauma that come via their teachers, bullies, and excessive homework. Arthur has a handful of friends whom he loves playing with, and also has to deal with his troublemaker sisters, DW and Kate. Enjoy this great message of friendship through fun-filled stories with a slice of life. This animated series features among the long line of shows that appeal to both children and adults, thus creating a huge target audience. The intelligent writing infuses a lot of humor in the stories, and whenever the protagonists come across problems and challenges, they're dealt with maturity. Although the books are written for kids, the show makes a few subtle changes to reach out to the adults as well. The bright and colorful animation adds to the positive nature of the show, and we love the amusing dialogue and touching storylines that are executed in the simplest of ways. If you're looking for a show that you can watch with your kids, look no further, because Arthur will tick all the boxes. The Powerpuff Girls, 1998. 3 superpowered girls, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup, were created when Professor Utonium accidentally mixed Chemical X during his attempt to create a perfect little girl. This unintentional invention works wonders for the city of Townsville, which has now found its ultimate protector. When the villains like Mojo Jojo and Fuzzy Lumpkins hatch sinister plans in Townsville, you have to contend with these flying, super-strong, karate-chopping superheroes who save the day more often than not. This Cartoon Network classic single-handedly influenced more girls into becoming fans of the superhero genre than ever before. The creative concept was handled with expertise to ensure a fine balance between action and witty storylines. The episodes look fresh even today, thanks to the energetic animation style, and the characters are relatable, even though they are superheroes. There's also a heartfelt and tragic side of the show that's exposed in a few episodes, but overall, the Powerpuff Girls is an absolute mood lifter. You'll be pleasantly surprised by the quality of satirical humor, and much like Animaniacs, this animated series can also be enjoyed with the entire family. Garfield and Friends, 1988. Garfield the cat is a familiar character all over the world thanks to the widely popular comic books, and this animated series explores his antics further. The episodes tell various stories about Garfield and Odie, who's a dog. Together with their owner John, they frequently get into trouble, and the lazy feline protagonist often has to save the day. The stories also offer a satirical take on American life and pop culture, which makes Garfield and Friends such a refreshing show to watch. This animated series can be safely termed as a timeless show, much like The Simpsons or Ren and Stimpy. You can re-watch the content multiple times, and you'll discover something new with each viewing. The episodes are divided into 3 segments, where the first and third always feature the lazy and sarcastic Garfield. The second segment covers a group of anthropomorphic animals that live on a farm. Lorenzo Music still echoes in our heads as the voice for Garfield throughout the 90s, before he passed away in 2001. If the CGI Garfield disappointed you, this show can reinstate your faith in the quality of the content. Beetlejuice, 1989. This animated series is based on the widely popular movie, and you'll be treated to the ghostly con artist Beetlejuice and his mortal best friend, a 12-year-old girl, Lydia. She loves everything that's spooky and morbid, which causes her friends and family to wonder about her. Beetlejuice, however, finds the perfect companion in her, and he takes her on journeys across the netherworld, which is his home. She gets to escape momentarily from her homework and snobbish friends, and Beetlejuice gets to do what he loves best: gross, mischievous missions for the thrills. There's quite a noticeable difference between the movie and the series, and one of the major differences is the absence of the original owners of the house. That being said, the changes don't affect the quality of the show, which is entertaining as ever. Beetlejuice and Lydia's chemistry and their creepy, gross and hilarious adventures are enjoyable, and you gotta love the abundance of pop culture references in the narrative. The never-ending flurry of fast-paced jokes tells you how strong the writing is, and there are some top-grade voice actors to support the efforts of the creators. If a network brings this show back, we already know it's going to be a huge hit once again.
Let's get him into the sunlight.
Little Bear, 1995. We all love a break from the serious and satirical cartoon shows once in a while, and innocent and adorable animated shows like Little Bear offer the perfect change. This long-running series is based on several children's books, and a grizzly bear cub is the main protagonist. This cute little bear ends up being a part of several misadventures along with his friends, and these exploits make for some very entertaining episodes that also put a smile on your face. Aside from being a fun and innocent show that targets children as the audience, the series also ends up imparting some valuable lessons through the stories. You'll enjoy the funny dialogue, where the naive and innocent characters are delightful to watch. It also comes with some lovely music, and the animation stands out as something that would definitely appeal to a younger audience. A lot of imagination goes into the stories, and the smooth voice work adds to the calming ambiance of the series. There's a few episodes that might be slightly scary for toddlers, but it's nothing too serious. As long as you want your kids to enjoy a show that brings social learning and adventure hand in hand, Little Bear should be right up there on your list. The Adventures of Tintin, 1991. When Hergé came up with Tintin and his remarkable adventures, he created something timeless. Over the years, we've had movies and cartoon shows besides the evergreen comic books, but this animated series still holds a special place in our hearts. The storyline focuses on the enthusiastic and righteous journalist Tintin and his pet dog Snowy. Whenever they smell foul play, they get to the root of the matter, and at times they have some company in the form of a loudmouth sailor, Captain Haddock, Professor Calculus, and the silly, goofy detectives. Hergé is a farsighted genius, and his stories prove the verdict time and again. The adaptation effort is sincere, and even though there are a few tweaks to some familiar characters, it's not enough for the fans to complain. The episodes are fun and thrilling, and the classic humor will resonate with everyone from kids to teenagers and even adults. The visuals are true to Hergé's classic drawing style, and the team of animators deserves all the credit for this. Even the voice cast is perfect, and everyone sounds exactly like you'll imagine while reading the comics. We still have fond memories of the song that played during the opening and final credits, and this show proves that magic can be created even with known stories if the adaptation is done right.
Off of my property.
Bobby, I know you can't talk in front of him.
I said get!
King of the Hill, 1997. This sitcom animated series is set in a fictional small town called Orland in Texas, and the story centers around the Hill family. Hank is a hard-working propane gas salesman, and his wife Peggy is a substitute Spanish teacher. He lives with his son Bobby and niece-in-law Luann, and the show deals with the wacky antics of this family. Hank tries to deal with the idiosyncrasies of the society, and the series offers some interesting characters in the form of his friends, such as the divorced military barber Bill and Dale, who's paranoid about conspiracy theories. The premise might sound slow and dry, but this series is genius work in its own right. The narrative doesn't feature crazy stuff that you see in shows like The Simpsons, but even a group of people just leading their life brings plenty to the table. The story is a satirical take on the Texas life, and the humor ensures some great laughs through the unusual and outsized characters. It might not be a laugh right like The Simpsons, but it's definitely more grounded and relatable in many ways. The show was eventually cancelled to make room for Family Guy, and even though there are no questions about the greatness of Family Guy, we wish King of the Hill enjoyed a longer run. Bobby's World, 1990. The protagonist of this series, Bobby Generic, isn't your average 4-year-old child. He's hyper-imaginative, and this imaginary world of his allows Bobby to be a part of several breathtaking adventures in his mind. The narrative focuses on this overactive imagination and all the fun that he has by virtue of his incredible thinking. There are also some other fun characters, such as his Uncle Ted, his dog Bobby, and his obnoxious brother Derek. This cartoon series is either loved by the viewers or hated for being too far-fetched, and then there's no in-between. The journey into the imagination imagination of a young boy can be fascinating, and we appreciate the way the narrative comes entirely from his perspective. The show lasted 8 years, because the makers never ran out of new story arcs, so don't be mistaken into thinking that things get mundane after a point. The fantasy-oriented situations are fun to watch, and the animation work is neat in its own way. There are ample laughs in the episodes, and a team of great voice actors breathe life into the characters. If you're game for something slightly different from the usual cartoon shows, you need to check out Bobby's World for sure.
He's cute.
Two Stupid Dogs, 1993. The title couldn't be more appropriate for this animated series because it's precisely what the show is all about. A couple of dim-witted dogs who keep getting into all sorts of trouble because of their inability to fit into the world. Little Dog is overly excited while Big Dog is easy-paced, and these crazy and dumb canines make a mess out of the simplest situations. The acts of stupidity usually lead to disastrous situations, and much of the show is premised on these misadventures. What we like the most about this animated series is how fresh it feels in spite of having such a simple story arc. The two protagonists keep arguing about the dumbest things, such as who'll get possession of a broken toilet seat, and you can't help but laugh at their antics. While the stories might seem light-hearted and jovial, there are some philosophical high points that the mature audience will notice. This Cartoon Network classic is also appropriately funny, and you'll enjoy the deceptively simplistic art style in the animation work. The stories might seem like exaggerated particulars, but there's a subtle poetic and satirical take in each episode. There aren't too many better characterizations of dogs in cartoon shows, and the show definitely deserves a greater audience than it got. Tom and Jerry Kids, 1990. Tom and Jerry is perhaps the single most popular cartoon across the world, and people never seem to tire from watching the hilarious antics. The cat and mouse duo are back again in a new form in this 90s classic, and this time you get to witness their younger versions. The show is catered towards children, which means that the violence has been toned down considerably, but the overall story arc follows the same theme, where the cat and mouse keep trying to outdo each other in a never-ending duel. There aren't too many greater blessings than having the privilege of growing up watching this evergreen series. We've gone through multiple versions of Tom and Jerry, and this particular animated series will rank quite high in that list. The stories are well thought out, even though the target audience are children, and the colourful animation coupled with the memorable theme song are just treasured core memories for everyone who grew up in this era. For a welcome change in the plot, young Tom also wins more than in the other versions, and we really can't find a single excuse for not appreciating this show enough. Goof Troop, 1992. Here comes a different story arc for one of the most popular cartoon characters of all time, Goofy. He's a single father who's raising his son Max diligently in the town of Spoonerville. Meanwhile, his otherwise peaceful life is often disturbed by the presence of a familiar villain from older cartoons, Pete, who happens to be Goofy's next-door neighbor. Their daily life, adventures, struggles, and laughter form the episodes of this heartwarming cartoon series. There's something very modern and very old school about this cartoon series. The makers managed to turn back the clock in many episodes, and the crisp and smooth animation quality with colourful backgrounds will take you to the early days of American cartoons. The hip and cool music is perfectly suited for the plot, and the storylines are always engaging. Although the episodes feature a fatherly figure of Goofy, he's still clumsy and lovable like he always used to be. Pete is a villain that you'd love to hate, and every other character has been well thought of before being introduced. The show can be devoid of logic at times, but surely that should be the least of your concerns while enjoying a fun show like this.
You've been busy, Arnold?
Kipper, 1997. Although the show aired in the US, Kipper was originally a British cartoon series. It's based on popular children's books by Mick Inkpeen, and the narrative takes you through the life of a dog named Kipper and his animal friends, Tiger, Pig, and Arnold. They're quite adventurous, but their daring stunts often get them into some funny and tricky situations, from finding a magical umbrella to going fishing or visiting the seaside. Kipper and his friends indulge in a series of fun activities that make for some very enjoyable episodes. This is easily one of the most charming shows that we watched as a kid, and the protagonist in Kipper is a unique personality who's childish and mature all at once. The simple and educational stories never become preachy, and the animation style is quite effective considering the theme of the show. Martin Clunes is simply brilliant as a voice actor, and the perfect balance between comedy and drama is what makes the show amazing. We still can't get over the catchy and memorable theme song and musical score, and children's cartoon shows seldom get better than this with the right kind of innocence and fun in each episode.
Where people come to see 'em, they really are a spree 'em, the Addams Family.
The Addams Family, 1992. The eponymous comic strip and a widely popular TV series had already made The Addams Family a household name, and now was the time to introduce an animated version of the versatile stories. We're given the familiar story of Gomez and Morticia Addams, who are an average American family with the usual challenges. The episodes take you through their unusual life, where they often encounter creepy entities from monsters to psychopaths. But it isn't a problem because The Addams Family too has its quirks. For people who grew up watching this cartoon, it's the spooky gags that they remember the most. It's a unique idea to give The Addams Family a cartoon show of their own, and it was quite thoughtful that the makers brought back an original actor from the 60s live-action series. The show is wonderfully eccentric, and the dark and artistic comedy never fails to disappoint. It's true that the show ran out of ideas after a point, but it was unforgettably funny while it lasted. Everything from the quirkiness of the show to the bizarre characters in the fun narrative are worth revisiting, even today. Timon and Pumbaa, 1995. The Lion King is perhaps the single most popular animated story arc all over the world, and people still love and resonate with the characters. This animated series makes use of two familiar faces from Lion King, Timon, a meerkat, and Pumbaa, a warthog. The narrative is premised after the events of the movie, and the episodes explore the adventures of this hilarious duo as they get into plenty of trouble in the jungle. Their African adventures are no less entertaining than The Lion King, and isn't a show that you should miss. Timon and Pumbaa is not the most innovative show out there, and the episodes do get loony and repetitive after a point. That being said, it'd be a big mistake to undermine the enjoyment factor associated with the show. The animation quality is definitely up to the mark, and the irresistible music keeps the fun rolling throughout. The two protagonists are definitely flawed characters, but their chemistry is impeccable, and the voice acting is equally impressive. There are simple lessons for kids in the narrative, and it can be a wonderful family show to enjoy with your little ones. Bonkers, 1993. What happens when a zany bobcat leaves his failing showbiz career behind to join the police force? It's exactly as you'd imagine. A comedy of errors and misadventures as Bonkers tries to help the police department in solving crimes. And the methodology, while not conventional or convincing, proves to be quite effective, as Bonkers teams up with his partners Lucky Piquel and Miranda Wright. Many people seem to think that Bonkers is a spin-off of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but it's totally a misconception. This was always intended to be a children's cartoon, and there are loads of crazy, corny fun throughout the narrative. The never-ending puns are intelligently wedged into the stories, and even the wacky characters' names stand out. The humor is smart and subtle, and it makes even the so-called meaningless stories a lot of fun to watch. The animation style is unique and definitely above average, and there isn't anything wrong with Bonkers worth complaining about. In short, we can never explain how hilarious and great the show is unless you give it a try. Franklin, 1997. This animated series is based on the books by Brenda Clark and Paulette Bourgeois, and it tells the story of an adorable 6-year-old turtle named Franklin. The episodes take us through his daily eventful life as he grows up along with his friends, Bear, Goose, Rabbit, Beaver, Mr. Owl, and Snail. They all learn about the world around them, and Franklin picks up values on how to grow up to be an honest turtle with a true character. Franklin is a super cute and entertaining show that manages to be educational without being too preachy about it. The writing is really good and thoughtful, and it's backed up by equally excellent animation work. You have a series of unforgettable characters in every episode, and their problems and situations are bound to resonate with every child. The stories cover universal events like the desire to have a pet or losing teeth and struggling with friends. Also, it's extremely relatable for children, and Franklin learns about things by making mistakes, just like the average child does. The reboot 3D version wasn't as good as the original, but the 90s nostalgia is definitely worth revisiting through Franklin. Tasmania, 1991. Taz happens to be a frenzied Tasmanian devil, and he lives on the island of Tasmania. His daily misadventures take him on a satirical journey through life, and the episodes explore his antics in detail. He lives with his family and friends on this island, and Taz also has to deal with the handful of enemies who make life difficult for him. You'll get to see some familiar Looney Tunes characters, and a few new ones as Taz explores his world to the fullest. It's surprising that the show isn't a smash hit, because it has everything from subtle comedy to fun-filled adventures. The animation looks so lively that you would wish you were there as a part of Taz's wonderful world. We're big fans of the writing and slapstick with all the smart jokes and satires. The writers ensured that the show remained open-ended and unpredictable, which is a big challenge for cartoon shows. We have some great characters in the mix of things, and the voice acting team involves some of the best in business, such as Jim Cummings and Rob Paulson. There are some moments when the characters break the fourth wall and address the audience directly, and the social commentary through casual storytelling will impress the mature audience as well. Cat Dog, 1998. What if a cat and a dog shared the same body? Cat Dog finds the answers to this bizarre situation through the protagonists who are conjoined siblings, a dog and a cat. The cat is the smarter one, but often the elaborate plans and schemes of the cat go terribly wrong. The dog, on the other hand, is happy to chase garbage trucks, and of course he drags the cat along with him during these pursuits. Together, the cat and dog duo are ridiculed and troubled, but it doesn't take away from their indomitable spirit. This might not be one of the iconic classics that changed cartoons for the audience, but we have to admit that Cat Dog has its moments that make it a pretty decent show. The storylines are intriguing and adorable, even when they get predictable after a point, and the animation style is quite unique to grab a few eyeballs. The whole idea of having conjoined twins, a cat and a dog in the same body, is undoubtedly innovative, and they encounter plenty of funny situations to add to the humor in the stories. Even the music in the show is commendable, and this cartoon series on Nickelodeon deserves a lot more attention than it gets.
Lions are cool!
Yes, cool, cuddly killing machines!
The Wild Thornberrys, 1998. Eliza is a special 11-year-old girl who has the ability to communicate with animals and understand them. She travels around the world in an RV alongside her parents, who make wildlife films, and her special abilities make her life extremely adventurous. The family keeps getting caught up in tricky situations, and Eliza bails them out with her special abilities. She's also accompanied by her teenage sister Debbie, foster brother Donnie, and a pet monkey named Darwin, and the show captures the world from Eliza's perspective. What's really commendable about the show is the ability to explore the ideal relationship between humans and nature. The Thornberrys are a quirky family, and the narrative carefully highlights the comedic side of their interactions. The showrunners go out of the way to present the animals as realistically as possible, and in many ways the series is light years ahead of its time. We have to admit that the episodes get repetitive after a point, but it doesn't take away the fun aspect whatsoever. Shows like this deserve a comeback all the more in today's times. Rocket Power, 1999. Oswald, Regina, Maurice and Sam are four friends in the fictional beach town of Ocean Shores, and Rocket Power is all about their day-to-day life and zany adventures. Otto and Regina are siblings who live with their widowed loving father Ray, who happens to be a surfer. Together, the group of four friends participate in various competitions and indulge in extreme sports to keep the adrenaline flowing, and for them, there's never a dull moment in Ocean Shores. Rocket Power brings back some wonderful memories for all the kids who loved adventure sports, and while the show may not be life-changing, it does have a uniqueness of its own. The simple stories usually venture into the life and problems that the kids encounter, and subtly enough, the narrative brings in some deep and meaningful lessons about life. The stories are realistic and not just cartoony mayhem, and the main characters all have distinct personalities that are relatable for the children. They look super cool while enjoying all the adventure sports, and for many kids it was a dream come true to watch them in action and imagine themselves in their shoes. Mortal Kombat: Defenders of the Realm, 1996. The legacy of Mortal Kombat can't be questioned, and this animated series is one of the lesser-known 90s cartoons that explore the concept further. The story starts off with Raiden assembling a group of professional fighters to protect the Earthrealm from alien invaders from other dimensions. The likes of Sonya Blade, Liu Kang, Sub-Zero, and other familiar Mortal Kombat characters must go all out to preserve the dimensional balance and defeat the evil forces of the Outworld. Many Mortal Kombat fans will agree that this animated series is a better version than Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and that's saying something. The plot delves into a lot of character development, and it's an effective way to get kids familiar with the Mortal Kombat lore. There are some memorable moments, and some interesting characters are introduced in surprise episodes. That being said, there are a few flaws, and the voice acting is more of a hit or miss. Ron Perlman does a great job as Stryker, but the same can't be said for everyone. Overall, it's a pretty decent effort that deserves some attention from the hardcore Mortal Kombat fans.
All the school bells are ringing. Now it's time to begin.
Gravedale High, 1990. Gravedale High is not your usual school, because apart from Schneider, who's a human, every other student is a monster. However, these aren't deadly or sinister monsters, and Schneider has the time of his life with vampires, Egyptian mummies, werewolves, and other friendly folk. Together, they brave their way through school life, enjoying sports, studies, friendship, and life in general. The friendly monsters are completely unaware of how they're terrifying for the others, and Gravedale High continues its journey in blissful ignorance. This early 90s animated series bears the spirit of the unique 80s cartoon shows, and although the narrative is genuinely cheesy, it's also undeniably entertaining. There are some creepy and naive-looking students in Gravedale High, and the situations they end up in are hilarious, even though they deal with subjects beyond the grave. The jokes are clever and witty, and the show is capable of entertaining adults as well besides the kids. There are some funny and dark moments that make Gravedale High stand out among the hundreds of cartoon shows from the 90s, and this underrated gem is a must-watch for those who are into old-school animation.
Look, it's the library.
Blue's Clues, 1997. There aren't too many good interactive TV shows around, and Blue's Clues definitely ranks among the more prominent ones. The concept of the show is quite unique, where a human host brings in his animated puppy Blue, and they usually have a few clues regarding what they're trying to figure out in each episode. The audience is invited to join in, and the help of some off-screen children is also sought to decipher the clues. This is one of the defining shows for Nickelodeon, and even with a very simple theme, the program effectively reaches out to the young minds. The cute characters and the original ideas are the reasons behind Blue's Clues enjoying such a long run. This creative series can be enjoyed by the parents just as much as the kids, because who doesn't love a little bit of brainstorming every now and then? The songs are fun to listen to, and the show can be quite educational at times without trying too hard. There are some actual values in the episodes, and this semi-animated saga is one show that you wouldn't mind your children binge watching. PB&J Otter, 1998. Peanut, his sisters Jelly and Baby Butter are three young otters who live on a houseboat on Lake Hoo-Haw. Their life with their family and friends is adorable and fun to watch, but it's not devoid of some daily challenges as well. However, there's nothing to worry about because the otter siblings can always put on their thinking caps by performing a noodle dance before they come up with a good idea or a solution. The show is largely focused on their adventures with friends and fun activities. This animated series is appropriate for everyone from kids to teenagers and adults because the writing is so versatile. The three protagonists are wonderful role models for young minds, and the adventures of the courteous and kind otters are heartwarming to say the least. The music is fun, and all the episodes have some underlying meaning and teach valuable lessons. The iconic noodle dance is great as well, and the children always try to replicate the amazing moves. The jokes are hilarious, and not necessarily in a childish and mindless sort of way. The animation work is criminally underrated, and in a world of below-par cartoon shows, we wish refreshing programs like PB&J could make a comeback. Cow and Chicken, 1997. It's a cartoon world, and let's not frown about an 11-year-old chicken and a 7-year-old cow being the unlikely siblings. They look out for each other, and the show revolves around how they navigate through life. They come across problems in school, and the devilish red guy has some crazy plans to make life difficult for the cow and the chicken. Luckily for them, they're in this together, no matter how complicated their challenges become. This widely popular Cartoon Network show had the right balance of humor and storytelling based around the two outrageous protagonists. The jokes are politically incorrect at times, and too many double-meaning jokes make this show a hit among the adults just as much as it's appreciated by the children. Charles Adler does a fabulous job as the voice for both the cow and the chicken, and the creativity and originality of the showrunners can't be questioned. The show also has surprising amounts of violence, and things get pretty gross at times, but the overall comedic element in the narrative ensures that this twisted animated series is still remembered fondly by those who enjoyed it back in the day. The Angry Beavers, 1997. Daggett and Norbert Beaver are two brothers who left home to lead an independent bachelor's life away from the family. They head out to the forest near their hometown, but the fun and wild lifestyle that they had hoped for turns out to have a few twists in them every now and then. The brothers get caught up in some weird situations, and they encounter strange government scientists, swamp witch, and mind-controlling pond scum as part of their daily adventures. Cartoon shows with minimal characters often rely a lot on the charm of the protagonists, and the Angry Beaver scores quite high in this regard. The funny and likable Beaver brothers make watching the show entertaining, and credit is due for the writers who go all guns blazing in their creativity. The narrative has a fine blend of subtle humor, pop culture references, and slapstick comedy, a combination that'll appeal to the young and old alike. The animation and music were also well made, and the theme tune is still catchy after all these years. If you're looking for adventure, comedy, humor, and romance all at once, this animated series can be just the right one for you. Roly-Poly Oly, 1998. This cartoon series is premised in a fictional geometric world, where the population is largely made up of robot-based characters. The Poly family lives in this bizarre world, and their accommodation is also quite strange. A house shaped like a teapot. Oly, Zowie, and Billy live as robots, and together they discover the real meaning of growing up through tales of friendship and growth. Oly and Zowie are siblings, and they live with their inventor father, loving mother, and fun grandpa, Pappy. The Poly family might seem like they have the usual dynamics, but their non-stop adventures make for some very engaging episodes. This childish animated series featuring robots is absolutely adorable, and you'll immediately be sucked into the world, where all inanimate objects have faces and are alive. It's a family show at its finest, as the makers add a lot of substance to the simple plot. The 3D animation and CGI work for the show has been handled wonderfully, and you'll enjoy the visuals just as much as you'll appreciate the family values. With dialogues kept to a bare minimum, it's a lot more about the body language of the characters. Kids learn about consideration and tolerance, and we strongly recommend the show for all the parents who want their kids to watch and enjoy something fun and educational. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, 1990. After the success of the movie adaptation, Bill and Ted were brought into an animated series in the early 90s. The story is focused around two high school dudes, Bill and Ted, who have access to a time-traveling telephone booth. Using the powers of this super cool device, they end up visiting various places in history and even travel into the future. Their time-traveling adventures make for some very interesting episodes, and even though they keep getting into trouble, Bill and Ted always find a way out. This cartoon series somehow slipped under the radar, but the show deserves a round of applause for recreating the magic of the movie. The likes of Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter reprised their roles from the movie, and the animated series became an amusing spin-off project. However, after the first 13 episodes, everything from the voice actors to the animation quality changed, and it was never the same again. Before things went downhill from the second season, this was a rather promising show, and it's a pity that the showrunners weren't too concerned about not changing something that wasn't broken in the first place. I Am Weasel, 1997. Previously on the list, we've already spoken about Cow and Chicken, and this is a more adult version of the concept. I Am Weasel features a super intelligent and generous weasel who's always at odds with his rival, a rather silly baboon. Their constant duels and efforts to outsmart each other make the episodes worthwhile, and equally effective in making the show great is the voice acting from the likes of Michael Dorn. The show can be quite surreal and rude at times, but that doesn't take away anything from how great the narrative is. Coming from the same guy who made Cow and Chicken, the episodes have plenty of adult jokes and, although they aren't as explicit as in The Simpsons or South Park, they're anything but innocent. The character designs match the characteristics of the individuals, and the animation work is nothing short of brilliant. We also admire the quirky and dynamic music, which sets the tone perfectly. The ideas are innovative, and the stories never feel rushed. Overall, this is one of Cartoon Network's most underrated shows that's as close to being the best as it gets.
Finding the lost 13 treasures of rule.
Pirates of Dark Water, 1991. Life changes for a young man named Ren after he rescues a stranger and learns about his true identity of a prince. In the course of time, he finds out that the only way to reclaim his heritage is to find the 13 treasures of rule, and he also gets a magic compass to locate this treasure across the oceans. Unfortunately, an evil pirate named Bloth is also after the treasure, and he keeps pursuing Ren for the wealth. Meanwhile, Ren is not alone in this struggle after finding new companions like a pirate named Ayaz and a few others. Things take a serious turn after Ren discovers that the inability to find this treasure would also lead to the destruction of the world, and now the struggle for his throne becomes a struggle for survival. This imaginative animated series is no less than a well-made adventure thriller. There's a surprisingly dark theme amidst the juvenile storytelling, which tells you that the scripts are quite mature. Saturday morning animated shows aren't really known for killing off characters, but the Pirates of Dark Water dares to break the norm. A terrific voice cast including talents like Brock Peters, George Nuber, and Frank Welker bring the characters to life, and this fantasy take on pirates suffered from a premature ending, even before the story could unravel itself completely. It's truly fantastic and admirable, and if you're into the high tide fantasy, well, the Pirates of Dark Water is a must-watch for you.
Oh! You found Vern?
Back to the Future, 1991. Based on the Back to the Future movie trilogy, this animated series offers a fun take on the adventures of the iconic Doc Brown. He's invented a unique time machine, and his family and friends often hitch a ride to visit various eras across time. New thrills and adventures await them at every step, and the episodes take you through this magical journey. Even though the theme is childlike, the show can be quite intriguing. This cartoon series was released just a year after the last movie in the trilogy, but the stories don't blindly imitate the film's story arc. In fact, some of the stories are quite clever and innovative, and we still remember the time when Doc went back in time and accidentally prevented the extinction of the dinosaurs. There are many characters that we know from the movies, and they transferred nicely to the series. The animation standard is set high, and subtle mistakes here and there can be ignored if you consider the amazing visuals. Every episode is worth watching, and all the fans of the movie franchise should check out the animated version as well.
Well, that's 20 tons of Overlord's firearms we won't have to...
The Savage Dragon, 1995. The Chicago Police Department gets a surprise blessing when a cop named Frank Darling discovers a powerful green-skinned mutant named Dragon. The mutant suffers from amnesia and has no idea about his real identity. It becomes a win-win situation for both parties after the mutant helps the police department in battling evil mutants under the sinister Overlord. Will Dragon finally get to know who he really is? The theme does sound similar to X-Men, and the heavy inspiration is quite obvious from the series. The protagonist helps the police force fight unite his own kind for the greater good. And there couldn't be anyone better than Jim Cummings to voice the titular hero. There are some memorable fight scenes, and even though some of the villains are pretty generic, the episodes never fail to land a punch. The typical 90s style animation works for us, and given the potential of the content, it's unfortunate that the Savage Dragon slipped under the radar.
Coming, Fluffy, I'm coming. Fluffy, you've got...
Road Rovers, 1996. Professor Shepard is an ardent dog lover who came up with a unique invention, the Transdogmifier. After the evil General Parvo destroyed his laboratory, the professor selected 5 different dogs and used his invention on them, turning the dogs into Cano Sapiens. These canine superheroes were pets of the world leaders, and whenever called upon, they would assemble like the Avengers and take down the evil forces, introducing the fur-raising adventures of the Road Rovers, who are the finest crime fighters that you can get. An original premise and intelligent humor is a deadly combination for any cartoon show, and Road Rovers excels in both departments. It also comes with great animation and music, and every episode has something new to offer. Every character has a unique personality, and there's enough depth in the characters with their struggles and emotions. Some of the jokes in the narrative will make sense only to the adult audience, and those with a taste for action comedies that aren't meant to be taken seriously will have a field day with this series.
Jimmy know that he's a mighty one.
Earthworm Jim, 1995. After the widespread popularity of the Earthworm Jim game series, the animated series followed suit with great enthusiasm. It tells the story of Jim, who transformed from an average earthworm into a superhero by virtue of a supersuit that evolved him. Now, he has the gift of super strength and various smart gadgets at his disposal, also helping his crime-fighting duties. There are several evil forces that are after his supersuit, and Jim must protect the world and his pals alongside his sidekick, Peter Puppy. The show has a bizarre concept, but what truly makes it a masterpiece is the brilliant writing. The story arcs are simply outstanding, and the well-paced and original episodes stand out as a refreshing break from the predictable cartoon shows. The main characters are likable and witty, and even the villains are outrageously fun to watch. The wild ride becomes unbelievably silly, but it's always delightful to watch the great assortment of characters in action. Dan Castellaneta steals the show as the voice for Jim, and everything from the surreal gags to the postmodern humor and inspired spoofs are worth revisiting again and again.
Jenny, what have we got? Sensors show the signal coming from inside a Toad slave.
Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Warriors, 1991. Bucky O'Hare is a galactic superhero who takes on the gang of evil toads keen on taking over the entire universe. Bucky and his crew of brave soldiers are caught up in the tides of this never-ending conflict, but suddenly the course of the battle sees a change. Bucky comes across a human boy genius who joins the ranks, and now life is about to become a lot more difficult for these ambitious toads. We all love to see the underdogs and unlikely winners taking on a superior enemy, and Bucky O'Hare does exactly against an enemy that severely outnumbers his forces. This thrilling animated series has some jaw-dropping visuals and a team of talented voice actors like Doug Parker and Scott McNeil. Make sure that there are no slip-ups in any department. The designs are original and the space battles look really cool. You'll find yourself getting attached to the honorable heroes of the show, and the villainous toads deliver more laughs than threats. It's shocking that the show never got a second season because it had all the makings of a long-running hit. Street Sharks, 1999. Welcome to the crime-fighting adventures of a group of half-man, half-sharks. Ripster, Streaks, Jab, and Slamoo are turned into mutant sharks, and now they fight the evil Dr. Paradigm to protect the Earth. They're all a different kind of shark with different abilities, and besides Dr. Paradigm, the sharks also fight to change the way people in Fission City look at them. Also, they're trying to find their father, and we have to watch the show to find out where their adventures take them. The show has uncanny similarities with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but we aren't complaining. It's not a blatant rip-off by any means, and the action-packed drama that unfolds is almost addictive. We still remember the catchy theme song, and while the show is no cultural masterpiece, it certainly has its moments. The animation does look cheap at times, but the voice acting is too good and makes up for any visual flaws. It would have been great if the series didn't end abruptly on a cliffhanger, but this is something that most 90s cartoon fans will be pretty used to. Enjoy this campy show for a smooth-sailing nostalgia trip. Mighty Max, 1993. Max is a 12-year-old boy who finds himself in unknown territories after he sent a red magical cap. This cap has the ability to teleport him across dimensions, and Max learns about the ancient prophecy that foretold him as the chosen one to fight evil forces across the world. Luckily for Max, he's not alone in these dimensional fights. He's helped by his guardian, Viking Norman, and a talking fowl Virgil, as he takes on all forms of evil like an absolute braveheart. While the show was initially marketed to cater to a younger audience, there were some controversies following following an increasing dark tone in the storytelling. There were instances that implied deaths of certain characters, and many situations had been deemed to be too dark for the kids. Of course, the adult admirers of the show had nothing to complain about, as they enjoyed the thrilling adventure of the mystical warrior. The characters in the show are delightful, and each and every design has been well thought out. Rob Paulson is terrific as the voice of Max, and with some skillful writing, the episodes never feel mundane. All in all, this is another of the many underrated animated shows from the 90s, and we can guarantee that you wouldn't be disappointed by the mighty adventurer and his fun journey.
All right, muters, it's time to jam it home. Razor, run a deep post.
Mutant League, 1994. We've all wondered at some point what it'd be like to have sporting events with mutants and their supreme abilities. Mutant League brings these thoughts to action after an earthquake exposes the players and attendees to toxic waste and mutates them. The Mutant League is formed, and the story captures the battle for the ultimate trophy, the Mutant League Championship. What happens when super strength, sonic speed, and other special abilities infiltrate sports, and does sportsmanship die a slow death as its consequence? This unique show is based on the concept of EA sports games like Mutant League Football and Mutant League Hockey. Even the mutants and names were largely similar, and the animated series also brought us the origin of the mutants. The gripping episodes exposed widespread corruption in the sports world, and despite being a low-budget cartoon, the animation work was quite intricately done. We're glad that the makers got away with the violence factor, considering it was a children's show after all. If you've played the games, or if the concept sounds intriguing, we say go for it.
It seemed like a good idea.
Crying out loud.
Life with Louie, 1994. We're used to cartoon shows featuring special kids, but Life with Louie is back to the basics. It talks about a child named Louie Anderson who has the usual problems that young kids associate with. He's growing up with his 10 siblings, and he endures a lot of bullying and teasing in school from his classmates. Louie has a caring and loving mother who balances out his war-crazed father, and the show is all about his growing up against the conventional kids' problems. This is truly a great cartoon show filled with lots of laughter in every episode. The well-written jokes keep coming, and the first-class humor is the life of this animated series. The narrative does a wonderful job of capturing the innocence and challenges of our childhood. Everyone watching the show would relate to a certain character and find a little bit of themselves. This Fox series became a huge hit in Eastern Europe and Russia during the 2000s, and this makes it more popular around the world than in the US. Why Fox cancelled the show randomly is beyond us, but don't let this hidden gem slip past you unwatched. Dog City, 1992. This animated series focuses on various anthropomorphic dogs and cats who reside in two different worlds, the live-action world and the animated world. Ace Hart is an animated canine private investigator, and he tags alongside his creator, Elliot Shag, and the episodes deal with the struggles of this dual world and the day-to-day life of Elliot and his cartoon friends. When we hear of a dog that solves mysteries, the first name that comes to mind is Scooby-Doo. Let's just say Ace Hart and Elliot Shag are smarter versions of Scooby, although they aren't nearly as popular. The series offers a wonderful mix of Muppetry and traditional animation, and it promises to be a unique experience. The characters are well written, and the same can be said for the sophisticated dialogues as well. The plots take you through some light-hearted parodies of the noir genre, and even the voice acting is a cut above the norm. Dumb and Dumber, 1995. Many of you are probably familiar with the Jim Carrey classic, which happens to be an absolute laugh riot. The animated version takes the misadventures of Lloyd and Harry further, as the two dimwits continue to drive around the country in their dogmobile. This time around, they have a pet beaver accompanying them, and their silly antics keep landing them in trouble, just like you've seen in the movies. If you think of comparing the animated series with the iconic movie, you're better off not watching this at all. Of course, it doesn't match up to the greatness of the movie, and the jokes don't come off as well as they did in the live-action version. Poor animation quality doesn't help the cause, and the sketches of Harry and Lloyd are strangely disfigured to add to the overall disaster. The lack of creativity in the episodes means that we see the same thing happening over and over again. However, you might give this a chance, considering that the formulaic plots were only meant to cater to children. Mighty Ducks, 1996. The Mighty Ducks come from the icy planet of Puck World, and they're a race of half-human and half-duck species. For them, ice hockey is a lot more than just a sport, and some members of these ducks end up finding their way to Earth following a clash with their rivals. Now, they have no way to get back home, and they settle down in a defunct hockey rink. The ducks have given up on their favorite sport, but they also find time to track down criminals, although the police chief is suspicious of their real intentions. The show's set on a pretty solid premise, and the well-animated visuals give us some colorful backgrounds and fluid colors. The writing is funny, especially when the makers use the fourth wall humor at times. Special talents like Jeff Bennett and Jennifer Hale take care of the voice acting department, and even the music in the show is memorable and fitting. Although there are some thrilling moments in the narrative, it's never the mindless action, explosions, and fighting that we usually find. Yep, the movies are really good, but the animated series is not too far behind.
I very much want to be at Warfield.
Good. And since you want to be here, I will help.
James Bond Jr., 1991. James Bond might be the most accomplished and charismatic spy in the world, but he achieved all the impossible stunts and missions as an adult. His nephew is a step ahead, and he's gotten into the serious business in prep school itself. James Bond Jr. takes on every threat from crazy scientists to deadly terrorists, and he accomplished his missions in style, just like his uncle would. This was a rather smart attempt to familiarize kids to James Bond, and the stories captured almost every aspect of the master spy, except his womanizing tendencies. The action is watered down to some extent, and the cheesy jokes lack the killer punch. But you have to consider the target audience before judging this series at par with the iconic movies. The animation work could have been better, but the visuals are not entirely disappointing. Overall, as long as someone's willing to watch this without preconceived bias, they'll enjoy some thrilling entertainment with a familiar theme.
Hangover. They're so bad, they've got more fur than any turtle ever.
Samurai Pizza Cats, 1990. The setting of this show is very interesting, as it's premised in Little Tokyo, which is a mechanical city and has a mix of feudal Japanese culture and contemporary culture. The center stage is taken by 3 cybernetic cats who work in a pizza parlor. However, their real identity is that they're effective crime fighters who regularly deal with the evil minions of the power-hungry rat named Big Cheese. It might seem like a spoof of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but Samurai Pizza Cats is so much more. The show has its unique brand of humor, and all the characters have their particular personalities and charms. The narrative never takes itself too seriously, and the light-hearted humor is such that even the villains are enjoyable on screen. As much as the comical adventures of our unique superheroes might seem cheesy and corny, the endings always have a message in them for the younger audience. We're a sucker for creative and original cartoon shows, and Samurai Pizza Cats ticks all the right boxes for us.
The nerve of some people. We're much too busy. Got a million things.
Quack Pack, 1996. We're all familiar with Donald Duck and his legacy in the cartoon world. This time around, he's back in a new avatar, where he works as a cameraman. He's accompanied by his 3 rebellious nephews, Dewey, Louie, and Huey, and Donald Duck must be a responsible uncle by keeping an eye on them, even while working. With so much of attitude in these teenage nephews, it's not surprising that they often run into trouble, and this underrated Disney show captures their misadventures. In the world of cartoons, we usually don't see characters aging, but Quack Pack allowed the same in a revolutionary move. This might not be the best Donald Duck show out there, but it is definitely a memorable one. The biting and sarcastic humor is a treat to enjoy, and you can ignore the silly plot points that make no sense whatsoever. It's fun to watch the familiar characters take on a different role, and the catchy music is perfectly suited to their antics. Some very talented voice actors bring the characters to life, and you wouldn't find enough excuses to skip such an unadulterated delight from the 90s. The Jungle Book, The Adventures of Mowgli, 1989. The story is premised in the jungles of India, where a young orphan human infant is raised by a pack of wolves. This boy grows up in the wild as Mowgli, and his canine family helps him in learning about the way of the forest. However, a powerful tiger, Shere Khan, is not too keen on having a human living amongst them, and he's constantly trying to find ways to get rid of Mowgli. Helped by the wolves and his trusted companions, Bagheera, a black panther, and Baloo the bear, Mowgli must find a way to survive and defeat the mighty Shere Khan. Almost everyone's familiar with Rudyard Kipling's classic tale featuring the wild child Mowgli, but this animated adaptation is relatively unknown. Of course, Disney has raised the standards high, but this Japanese effort can't be undermined. The makers don't hold back, and the narrative shows animals being taken down and even a beloved main character being killed. The technical aspects are flawless, and we also love the soulful music that goes well with the overall theme. When the show aired in the US, many were taken aback by the different styles of work for such a notable story. But trust us when we say that watching the series will be time well spent. Do let us know in the comments below which ones from the list are your favorites and which cartoon characters you absolutely adored. Also, tell us about some of the shows that we may have missed out and why you regard the 90s to be the golden era of cartoons.